Hi, everyone. So our apologies that we were on mute. So that was fun.
We were mute the whole time.
At least we realized that we were on mute only 2 minutes in. Our apologies for that basic tech error here for this live stream. And we'll get into who sponsors this edition at the end of analysis number 58. Graham, why don't you take it back to where you started, which is that Bitcoin is due a cool-off?
Great. So is the screen being shared? Yes,
it is indeed.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's start from the beginning with a little recap. So obviously we've had an absolute cracking 3 months. So we had November, December, January, or the most part of January, really, really strong moves for Bitcoin. I think a well-deserved rest is not to is not unfair to have Bitcoin take a little bit of a cool-off period.
Before you continue there, in your mind, what defines a rest?
So typically Bitcoin in the past in big bull runs, like in 2017, it often has up to a 30% correction. So especially to those that are used to trading more traditional markets, that's very, very scary. And I think we become a little bit numb to some of the volatility in the crypto markets in time, and it's just something that you have to live with and you have to adapt to. So 30% bump in the road in a traditional market sounds very scary, but I think that if you do have a longer term outlook for Bitcoin and where it can potentially go, that's just some of the volatility that you need to stomach, and either you just ride that out or you look to play it with a little bit of market timing thrown in there, where you can either overweight yourself towards crypto or underweight yourself to crypto, depending on what your outlook is in the shorter term. So that's what I'm looking to do. So I did say on the group that I sold out a decent chunk of my holdings at 35,000. In hindsight, that's looking like a fairly decent figure to have taken some holding off the table, and that now leaves me with a little bit of dry powder, which is good, given the fact that I am expecting some further downside in the short term. So on the chart here, I've highlighted the 2 areas that I have buy orders placed. And just to talk a little bit more about the structure, so this looks to me like a descending triangle. So we had 2 significant areas of support. First, this top pink zone, so that's between 35,000 and 34,000. So that is what I would call a zone of support. And the next zone of support now that we're really looking at testing with quite a lot of there's quite a lot of weight to this testing in the selling, is between 31,500 to 30,500. So that's the zone now that we really are testing as support. And my bias is towards it breaking to the downside. And then I think we could get a break as far down as 27,000. So that's where I have some buy orders. I then have some buy orders at 23,000. I think it's unlikely we get to 23,000, but I don't want to blow my whole dry powder stack at the 27K, and then we do end up falling a little bit further, and I'm left without any ammunition. So that's really what I want to stay a little bit flexible to see how the market starts to play out when we get to these levels.
So I mean, this break now, we've gone below $31,000 for the first time in a while.
Yes.
When I say a while, I'm talking like a week and a bit, but it's been threatening to break down. Do you foresee that this is the moment now that we're going to break below that lower support level that you've highlighted there?
Look, not necessarily. I mean, we really are flirting with the borderline here. We've seen a couple of wicks go through this level and get bought up really quickly. So there's no guarantee that we're going to break to the downside here. For some, this may be seen as a decent buying opportunity. I mean, we've seen quite a lot of fundamental news come through with Michael Saylor, and I think it was the Yale Endowment Fund and some proper institutions stepping in and being quite public about their purchases of Bitcoin or their holdings in Grayscale, which is an easy way for institutions to get access. So there's by no means to say that the buyers have disappeared, and we could, of course, bounce strongly off this support and carry on higher, and that means that my buy orders just never get filled, and I have to be comfortable that if that's the case, and then I need to reposition myself and then potentially look for to trade a break of one of the upside resistance levels here. But for now, again, my bias is to the downside, and I've got my buy orders at 27K, and that's what I'm looking to get filled at this point in time.
On the groups, you said that you were 60-40 bearish. Yes. Has that outlook changed in any way, or
a little bit more bearish now that we have moved further, and we are now testing the lower end of this resistance zone? So first, when I was saying 60-40, we were up here around 31,500. Now we're at 30,500. So I would say 65 bearish to 35 bullish. So that's where I stand right now.
All right. And any of the other charts that you want to go through?
Yeah.
ETH is probably risky now that Bitcoin's threatening that move to the downside.
Yes. So actually, I'm going to start with the ETHBTC chart, because I think this tells us quite an interesting story. So I'm more bullish on Ethereum over the medium term to longer term, but I can't see ETH continuing to rise higher, at least not rise higher at a really high rate. I'm not expecting a large magnitude move to the upside if Bitcoin has a short-term pullback. So if that happens, I do expect Ethereum will have a bit of a knock as well, and potentially even a greater knock, at least in the short term. So, but we do have this head and shoulders picture playing out that we've spoken about before on the ETHBTC chart. And in time, I'm expecting this to break further above this neckline, which is this pink area, and carry on higher. But in the short term, my bias again is towards a bit of a take back in market cap from Bitcoin and against the other alts. But I think Ethereum will fare better than the other alts. I think that's where your smaller cap alts are going to start to take a fair amount of pain if Bitcoin sells off. So I think potentially this may take a little bit of time to play out, some sideways consolidation, maybe in the short term, quite a bit of volatility, because we have gone up with a lot of volatility in the recent times. So I'm not jumping into ETH, but as I'm looking to accumulate, and to say that I've got buy orders sitting here at 27K for Bitcoin, I've got larger buy orders sitting further down the road for Ethereum, because that's really where I'm actually looking to grow my pot if we do have a significant pullback in the crypto markets, which I think will be broad based. So I just don't see Bitcoin selling off and the rest of the altcoin market and Ethereum just carrying on. So yeah, that's how I'm looking to play that. But I am looking to move a larger portion of my longer term holdings if we get a sell-off into Ethereum rather than Bitcoin.
All right. And you went from, when you talk about preparing to buy some ETH, you went to the ETH USD chart. So I would imagine those purchases are going to be with your USDT that you sold out of when you were in Bitcoin.
100%.
Got you.
Yeah. So this is where I'm looking to allocate more of my dry powder is into the ETH market. I haven't got targets here yet, but I could tell you around about the $930 level. That would be an area that I definitely start to get interested in if ETH were to drop to those levels.
Okay. Yeah. What else do you have for us?
Yeah, so just quickly, the Bitcoin dominance chart. So again, here, the Bitcoin you can see has been under quite a lot of pressure over the last couple of weeks, and that is a signal of the alt action that we've had and the alt season, really getting into full tilt. I think it's going to have a little bit of respite here. So this will see some, the BTC dominance chart tick up a little bit as it takes some market share away, particularly if we do see some sell-off, because then Bitcoin's going to fare better than the rest of the market. But then medium to longer term, I think that Bitcoin dominance continues to decline as ETH takes market share and potentially some of the alts. So worth keeping an eye on that. And we can see there's a bit of a contraction of volatility here. We've got, over the last couple of days, some sideways movements, and I think that's a little bit of an absorption of momentum, and we'll then get a fairly impulsive break once we get some direction here. Then here is your shitcoin index, and you can see that we're under a fair amount of pressure here off the back of some Bitcoin weakness. You can see that we haven't managed to break through these highs. So this just looks a little bit long in the tooth for me. So this is your altcoin season type of index to watch, and I think that there's a decent cool off period here. And again, that's going to offer an opportunity. So ETH is the first one I'm looking to jump into. But if some of my favorite alts that I've mentioned on the group before, Engine, I like. Polkadot I'm waiting to get into, but it's just been at far too high valuations. Libraries, another one that I like. So if those sell off really hard, then those are a couple I can also look to pick up. at a cheaper rate.
And are you playing this this shitcoin perpetual market on FTX at all?
No, so I don't trade this directly. I would prefer to go and pick a couple alts that I like more than the others, because there's a lot of real rubbish baked into here. Hence the appropriate name.
You are. My understanding is you're able to open a short or a long position on FTX's shitcoin index.
That's right.
So that's why I asked, would you short that specific index on their platform?
No, so I do prefer to go and pick individual alts, and FTX is great because it actually has a very large variety of alts that you can trade on leverage. So I do enjoy that about their platform. But this is, for me, if I wake up in the morning, make a cup of coffee and try and understand where the market is positioned, the index is a really nice one to look at, because it strips out your real outliers and gives you a picture of what's happening across that specific market sector, let's call it that. Yeah.
Must be a little bit, this specific index must be a little bit more fuzzy than Bitcoin dominance, because Ethereum
won't be. Yeah, you asked me that the other day.
I did ask you that already.
So it does strip out the larger. It does strip out the larger.
So it's literally the shitcoin index.
Yes.
Okay, they don't call it the shitcoin index for nothing. Okay,
but these are the exciting ones. So in here, there's going to be a few absolute showstoppers, and if I can allocate even a small percentage of my portfolio to some of those and get even 1 or 2 right out of 10, then I'm expecting to be in a profitable position.
All right.
Yeah. And then. So we did get a request for link, so I'll jump into that in a sec. But the other chart that's very interesting to watch, that I think is having quite a big bearing on what some of the price action that we're seeing now, as well as potentially going to influence price action going forward for the crypto market, is the US dollar index, also known as the DXY. Okay, and we can see that the dollar has had a significant, a period of weakening, all the way since really Corona. So Corona, there was a massive spike up, and since then it's been a slow bleed of the dollar losing market cap against other currencies. Now you might say, well, what does that have to do with the crypto market? So it's just really a measurement of the value of the dollar and risk on, risk off. So if there's a risk off approach, we're going to see this massive uptick, and that's a flight to safety. Okay, and what we've seen since then is a risk on approach. So we've seen equities go up, property go up. So many of the asset classes go up, including crypto. Okay, and including your gold and silver. So because all these major indices and asset classes are all priced against the dollar, if the dollar is weakening, then it makes sense that those other asset classes are going to be moving up. Right. So when we look at the Bitcoin chart, we look at the Bitcoin dollar chart. So if and we've seen, especially over November, so that was the start of November, and since then we've had a significant weakening of the dollar, and that's been the precise time when we had our big Bitcoin bull run.
Interesting.
So now what we are seeing on this chart is a sign of bottoming. So we do potentially have an inverse head and shoulders developing. If we break to the upside, and here is your neckline, what price is that? Around about 90. So if we do break to the upside, that would be quite a bullish sign for the dollar, and that would be a potential headwind against Bitcoin and all the other cryptos that go with it. So this is a chart that I'm watching, and again, if we do break to the upside, that's another reason to be potentially bearish for the next couple of weeks for Bitcoin and the crypto market.
Just want to ask you very quickly, looking at that chart, you removed the head and shoulders there. Now, for me, who's not a professional trader whatsoever, and doesn't necessarily look at a chart and immediately see patterns without actually really looking for them. When you look at this chart without the head and shoulders pattern overlaid there, can you see, I'm just curious, as an analyst, can you see that developing straight away? Is that something that you go, hang on a second, it's developing?
Yeah. So
that's kind of obvious for you. So it looks obvious when you pattern it for us.
Yeah.
But when it's not there, is that something that you easily see?
Yeah. So you just see this momentum running up. So here we've got a steeply declining trend, and you can see that start to base out. And then the next question is inverse head and shoulders. So then you start to say, well, what type of bottoming pattern potentially is developing here? Is it just a rounding bottom? Yeah, you could call it a rounding bottom, but it does have a clear inverse head and shoulder structure. If you then analyze it a little bit more detail, this would have been quite similar type of setup here. maybe not as clean inverse head and shoulders, especially if you want to try to put that pattern tool on. But you can see that this didn't really materialize. So even though we did kind of break to the upside, it was a false start, and then we carried on weakening. So there's no, again, in technical analysis, there is no guarantee. It's all about probability rather than guarantee. So you always have to keep that in mind, and remember that all we're looking for is an edge here. We're not looking to predict the future 100% and put 100% of your portfolio on the line for a specific trade because you see something in the chart. It's all about playing the probabilities out in your favor over time. That's really the best that we can do in our analysis of
no, absolutely. And I think that's so important. I have certainly lately been getting quite a few people DMing me saying, do you think this is going to go up? Do you think this is going to go up? And I'm like, well, there's no guarantee here. And people need to understand that this is all probability. Some probabilities are stronger than others, right? But just specifically, I wanted to see how you look at a chart and if you can identify it straight away. Like seeing charts on a regular basis, I've come to see the symmetrical triangle very, very easily. It's very, for me, in my eyes, it's very easy to see a symmetrical triangle developing on a chart. But some of those other patterns that your head and shoulders, inverse head and shoulders, bear flags, bull flags, etc., it's interesting to know how an analyst actually looks at the chart. Anyway, don't want to take too much more of the audience's time. You've got Link. Show us what's happening.
So Link was a specific request by Alex. Thanks, Alex. And yeah, look, Link is looking pretty strong. I mean, we don't have too much data on this specific chart, but we can go back at least to the start of 2020, and it's been a great ride. I mean, here was your big sell-off in March, but even that didn't make significantly lower lows like you'll see on many of the other charts. So Link really has been a star performer. And I mean, on a fundamental level, I don't see too much competition for places in the top 10. Outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think it's almost anyone's game. Yes, Tether's going to be up there, but that's not something that you can allocate capital to and expect it to appreciate.
To this day, I still don't know how Tether has an all-time high of $1.18.
Ripple seems to be declining. Polkadot is something that has only come onto our radars fairly recently. Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin Cash don't seem to be convincing. So there's a lot of potential, what do we call it? It's almost a vacuum where if we have some projects stick up their hand and really show value like a Polkadot has done, then I think that they really can take more market share, because I think that the appetite is going to be moving outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum once your first large chunks of capital go into those markets. So Link is definitely one that's worth keeping an eye on. Again, in the short term, I think that we get a bit of a sell-off. Maybe we even find support as low as $12.50, because that's where we're showing that we've got significant historical volume at that level. So if we did get a significant sell-off, that's where I would potentially expect strong support. So if we do get a dip to that level, that would be a great buy, I think, because it still has to fall 41%. So maybe that's being a little bit optimistic, but if that were to occur, I'd definitely be a buyer at those levels. So again, on the whole, I think expect some downside volatility in the short term, and the jury's out about how big that could potentially be. We know how volatile Bitcoin and Ethereum and the crypto markets can be, especially if they're looking to flush out some of the retail money and some of the weekends, because we know that more and more this is becoming an institutional game. So don't be flushed out without a plan to get back in at a better price. Would be that's my position. So I'm not looking for institutions to take my Bitcoin off my hands without a plan to get back in at some stage. That's how I'm personally positioning myself.
All right. Now, we've got a couple of requests here, but I'm not sure how you feel about doing a quick live chart off the cuff.
Yeah.
You do that for us? Okay, so this is from obviously Paul Francis. Paul, thank you for all your charts and continuing to be bearish. It looks like your analysis is finally starting to play out. And agreed, this isn't a masterclass, so sorry for that question. Now, Paul's got a whole bunch that he wants to look at. He wants to look at Theta, LRC, Civic, and Nano, but I'm going to choose one of those because of time. Let's go with Civic. So never mind. Graham chose it for us. We're going to go with Theta.
So Theta is one I was watching. watching.
Okay.
Anyway, because it was set up looking to move to the upside. What put me off this trade was, again, the Bitcoin chart. So this is for me the gold standard, and this is the chart I look at first. So if this isn't making sense to me as a bullish case, then any altcoin short-term trades gets a whole lot of cold water poured on it. So Theta was looking good for an upside break. You can see there is your symmetrical triangle, which it did, start to go. But we've seen quite a significant pullback now. So that is what I kind of expect to happen with these continuation patterns that we are seeing on some of the alts, is that we do get some false starts. So I didn't take this trade. If Bitcoin was looking more bullish, and I think if Bitcoin did break to the upside of this structure, then we would also see Theta absolutely flying here. So because this doesn't give me the green light, I wasn't willing to give this one the green light. And so far, obviously this can prove me wrong if it finds support here and carries on to the upside. But for me, I decided to stay out of this trade. And what I would expect, let's have a look at Civic, because you were quite keen to see that one very quickly. I'd expect we got a similar structure. That's interesting. So we got a really big pump over here. That was at the start of November. And then we're seeing some potential continuation patterns. So here's the symmetrical triangle that we love so much, because you get that contraction of volatility and then explosion of movement out of it. And we're potentially looking at number 2 sitting up here. But again, having threatened the top side of this trend line here, we now have dipped to the bottom side of it. So again, I think if Bitcoin goes up, it goes up. If Bitcoin goes down, it goes down. And I think that can be applied across the board as a rule of thumb. But that's not to say that there won't be a few exceptions to that. But given the macro market conditions with Bitcoin, I'm not willing to look at any alts at this point in time.
All right. So wrapping it up, coming back to Bitcoin, Graham, what I want to ask you is, if we do break to the downside, which when she does break, she breaks pretty violently, as we've seen, whether it's up or down. If we sort of find ourselves bouncing around the $27,000 region, how long until you foresee things turning around? And I know that is a very tough question, but if you had to make a call.
Yeah, you can only tell when you get there. So, we could get a really sudden break here and a wick through the 27, which would be great for me, and then bounce straight back up. That would be
pick up all your buy orders.
That would be the perfect scenario for me. But I think that if you do break to the downside here, like you said, I think fairly impulsive. And then often you expect then that return back to that significant level that it originally broke, and then you get the further slide down. So that's kind of typical price behavior that I would expect to see. And when it gets to this level, then you have to reassess. So now, are we starting to see a bear flag? That would suggest consolidation. So then I'm starting to get more excited about my 23K orders. If we do see like a bear flag or downside continuation structure setting up. Alternatively, do we see a reversal pattern start to set up? So that could be an inverse head and shoulders. It could be a rounded bottom. But you can only start to make those type of assessments when you get there.
All right. So I tried to get it out of him, guys. Unfortunately, he wasn't biting.
Keep dodging those.
That's about it for questions. Tyron Momberg says, we need a 5-minute reminder next time. Come on, Tyron, I gave you as much of a reminder as possible. Lindley and Alex want to know, where is the social distancing? Well, when we were on mute, I explained it all, so you guys missed it. And then, Paul, last question for you, Graham, here is, do you look at total market cap when weighting your bias to up or down?
I'd occasionally look at the total market cap, but at least for me, it makes sense to break it down by sector. So Bitcoin is giving me my best barometer of the movements of crypto in general. And you can use the total market cap for that as well. But these are the charts that I really do spend time looking at. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Dominance, and we've thrown in the shitcoin index the last couple of weeks as well, which is quite a nice one. So with that selection of charts, I feel like I can get a pretty good broad view of what's happening in the crypto market.
Okay, all right, we're gonna leave it there, guys.
Last question.
Last one. This is great. This is great. Paul, you're hilarious, man. Paul says, when is Aiden Markram going to score runs? That's the biggest gamble of all.
I wouldn't take any bets on that because, I mean, Aiden Markham just looks so good in the first class cricketer, and he looks like such a good batsman. He just can't really convert that into some international runs. But Paul and I have quite a lot of conversations about the cricket scene, but I think that's a little bit off topic.
Well, yeah. Next question would be when will South Africa be good at cricket again? Who knows? Paul, thanks so much, man. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. I think we're going to leave it there for today. Graham, thank you.
Thank you, James.
It's been great. Apologies for that audio blip at the beginning, and we will be back next week where we're going to be giving away a Ledger wallet. So if you want to win yourself a Ledger wallet, we will deliver it to you anywhere in South Africa. It's sponsored by Crypto Vault. If you are looking to store your crypto on a secure and safe device, Ledger is the place to do that. And you can buy a Ledger from cryptovault.co.za. So we're giving away a Ledger next week. Join us then. This week's episode is proudly sponsored by revolutionary digital and online OTC exchange, havenglobal.com. The link that is in there in the description here, but it's pretty simple, havenglobal.com, where you can make very large orders on Bitcoin and Ethereum without worrying about slippage whatsoever. Very, very affordable fees. Basically, exchange fees, the top exchange fees around the world for quality OTC trading, and you get personalized service. Fiat deposits are done to their bank account, their signature bank account in New York, and they reflect immediately. So if you're interested, check them out, havenglobal.com. Until next time, folks, from myself, James Preston.
And myself, Graham Tennant.
Goodbye.
Cheers for now.
Cheers, everyone.